All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our historical series. If you could take just a few minutes to introduce yourselves and tell us about your connection to DMS, we can all get to know the people that made it possible. Jill, will you go first? You're top of my screen.
Oh, sure. My name is Jill Thomas, and we started in the community in January of 1999. At that time, we had one child, Zachary, and he was almost 3, and he started in the preschool. It was a 2-day-a-week program, and we immediately fell in love with the school the first time we walked on the campus. Fast forward, Gerald and I joined the board the same day, the day that the school decided to change from an independent school to become a charter school, which took about a year, a little over a year of work to happen. And I was on the board for about 15 years and school board president for 12. We had both of our boys attend through 8th grade, and our daughter May just they all attended preschool. And then our daughter went preschool through 12th grade, and she graduated a year ago, and she just got back a couple days ago from her first year at university at Lewis and Clark in Portland.
All right. Amy? Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, I am Amy Bird, and I first connected with Desert Marigold when it was called Desert Marigold Play Garden, and it was in a little rented bungalow in Central Phoenix. I think the first time I visited was probably September or October 1994. And then when I moved from Tucson to Phoenix in early 1995, my daughter, who was 3 then and is now 29, started going to the preschool. So Colleen said to be brief. So I'll just say that I was a parent volunteer. I made 4 little aprons, and then within a year or 2 was helping find the school campus, was on the board. I served for many years as the school administrator and then the development director. Both my children went through 8th grade, and I'm just so grateful for the experience.
Thank you. Jamie?
My name is Jamie Shaver. We were first introduced to Desert Marigold through the play group also when it was held at the co-op in Tempe. I don't even remember what year that was, but I think Mike was maybe 2. So probably a couple years before Jill had started. And then, I knew Colleen, and we just kind of kept in touch. And then when the school went charter, that first year it went charter, is when my oldest son started. So he started in 1st grade. And both of my boys attended Desert Marigold. My youngest preschool. Preschool through 12th grade, and my oldest 1st grade through 12th grade. And I also very much a parent volunteer in the beginning. There you go. And then became the school's secretary, administrative assistant, I think is what it was called that first year when that position was developed, and then moved into the business manager and finance manager role. And I was there for a total of about 17 years as an employee or contract employee at the end.
Jesslyn?
I am Jesslyn Hall, and I found Desert Marigold School actually in the Yellow Pages when I moved down here in July of 2000. And I came to visit and fell in love and Manu started school that end of August, and I was offered a job a few days later, and as the assistant in Miss Gina's kindergarten for the next couple years. And that was while it was private. Then it became chartered, and I then took a lead position at the school for the next 6 years. So I was there a total of 8. And then I became class parent extraordinaire for the next several years. And afterwards, I Mono graduated 8th grade and then went to Arcadia High School for a few years and then came back her senior year, as she said, to graduate with her family her senior year. And yes, I love Desert Marigold ever since.
Thank you. Gerald, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you're connected to the school?
I'm finally on to start with. Me a little
Alright.
bit of a issue here. I do only 2 Zoom classes a week for the past year. I figured I knew how to do it. I still don't know how to do it, I guess. I went looking for a school for my son, Mark. He was in 3rd grade, and Amy, I believe, or Tom, had mentioned Desert Marigold School, so I went out and explored. And when I saw the school, I wanted to go there. So I was really hoping Mark would choose the school, and he did. So it was great from there. And then I met all these other wonderful people that are on this call, and more and more and more. Yeah,
How long did you serve on the board?
I don't know.
Many years.
Many years, yes.
All
Yes.
right. So what I love to focus tonight on is the growth from the like early playgroup days in the little bungalow to where you knew that the school needed a new physical home and how that home came to be and came to develop. So at what point did you decide that the school needed, or did whomever was making that decision, decide the school needed to move to a new location from the rental house in Phoenix?
Who are you asking that question to?
Whoever can answer, and you
Oh, okay.
can have
Well, I
yourself
wasn't part of
removed.
the, no, I wasn't part of the rental house, so it's got to be Amy probably.
Yeah, I can speak to that. What I remember is that the way that that house was licensed, it was licensed for in-home daycare. That was the way that it worked. And there was somebody who rented a room, and the number of children that could be there at any given time was based on the number of bathrooms. And there was 1 bathroom, so there could only be 10 children at a time. And so the idea was that in order for the program to grow more, that it needed more space. So different people on the board, I wasn't on the board yet, picked different parts of the valley to go look at and explore and see what kind of properties were available. And I remember somebody finding a property and a lot of us going to visit it. And I think it was somewhere in North Central Phoenix, and it had a lot of good qualities, but it also seemed like I wish that it had more space. And then I found out that the person who was going to be looking in the South Phoenix area was kind of in the process of moving or separating from the school or whatever it might be. And so I just decided it would be fun to drive around there. And that was when I first saw the property on 28th Street. And then there was a whole process of the school, people at the school exploring it and imagining whether it could be possible or not.
What were the features about the 28th Street property that really called to you as a future home for the school?
There were a lot of them. One of the things I remember was we were actually driving into that area. I was with the realtor who had helped me buy the house in Tempe where I live. And I had my 2 children. They were both in car seats in the back of actually the realtor's car. We'd gone to see some property that was on, I think, 26th Street. All the roads in the area were dirt at that point. So we're bouncing along, and on what we see on 26th Street is this old chicken farm with all these chicken coops. And then we go along Vineyard, and then we turn up 28th Street, and we weren't even looking for that property, but I remember turning, seeing that it was for sale, seeing the beautiful bougainvillea and the house with the blue trim and the shape of it and all of the green around it. And I said, what about that one? And the realtor said, oh, that's too big and too expensive. And I just remember how I felt when I saw it. And later he called and said, well, it's because it's actually 5 acres. And then it went from there.
I'm just curious, do you remember how much it was?
Yeah, it was 185,000 in 1996.
What a bargain.
Bargain today.
Yeah.
Not then.
I'm sure Vic stays up there. Also, can other people talk about the developments? Like, we know like buildings came and some were actually constructed on campus and some were brought in. And how you
I think it's funny that Amy said, you know, that the reason that they were looking for something new to move out of that little bungalow was the bathroom, because that seemed to always be the issue, you know, with anything that kind of spurred on any, when we were talking about, we need more classrooms, but at the same time, it was always, and we need more bathrooms. Every building project, it seems like we did, was to add more bathrooms. I know that when I started and was actually there, the school was already on the property at 28th Street, and the Straw Bale building was just being built. So the outside was up, but the inside didn't have the dividing wall. And so it was all open. It seems like one of the first things that was done, there was some sort of play or something that happened in that middle space that was just wide open between those two rooms. Yeah, and there were quite a few buildings built between then and when I left a few years ago. So
always growing and still need more bathrooms, by the way.
That-
The key for developing structures, more bathrooms. Were there phases of development, or was it just like need based and as the money came in, like one more thing? Or was there a more cohesive plan?
No, I think it definitely, I remember, so I started that first year that the school was charter on that campus. And it seems like, and Amy, correct me if my numbers are off, but I think we started with like 65 or 75 kids at the beginning of that school year. And by the end of the school year, we were up to 125. So we like doubled our student population in 1 year. And then I think the next year we were at like 175 kids. I mean, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then obviously, starting with the preschool and then K through, was it 5th grade the first year it was charter?
I think so.
Yeah.
That sounds
Maybe
right.
maybe six. I think the last year that it was private, it had a combination, did have a combination.
4 or 5. And so
Or
then
maybe
maybe a combo
it went
5,
through
6.
four. It went through 4th and then it had a combo 4 or 5. So you're right, it went through 5th.
Yeah. So then obviously, you don't want to just say to those kids, well, thanks for being here through 4th grade or through 5th grade, and we don't have a class for you next year. So, that kind of spread a lot of it on was, where do we stop? Do we grow to 6th grade and stop, or do we grow to 8th grade and stop? Which is where it ended for a while before the high school was developed. So, adding a grade every year really pushed, the need to have new buildings, to add the modular building, and then those buildings that were built there on campus. I remember the day the kids all sitting out there and watching the building being brought in 2 pieces and on these big trucks and then craned into place. And I'm not sure what grades are in that one now. That's the building that's closest to the Straw Bale.
1, 2.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was out there with Amin, who's a little guy and super excited to see the big
Yeah.
building being lowered. Jill, could you tell us about, you mentioned earlier that you volunteered regularly for the Straw Bale construction. Can you tell us what that was like?
So when we started, it's similar to what Jamie remembers. So I remember the concrete slab and the walls were sort of up, but they weren't stucco. The inside was not finished. And so like every Wednesday, it was like a stuccoing Wednesday. So there'd be all like the moms or dad, whoever could be there, babies strapped, babies running around, and we would stucco. it was anything to get it done. Every weekend there was a work day. He was our only child, and it was our first time at a school. And so I just assumed that this is how schools were, that you're down at school like all the time. And then people would bring food, and there'd be picnics. There were a couple families, Amy's being one of them and Tara's the other one, that they would sleep down there some weekends. It was literally all hands on deck at the beginning when we were, I know that we call it like the pioneer spirit, but we really felt that we were part of something and making, we could see visual differences. You'd work after a work day, like a whole room would be painted or done, or the whole campus would be, trimmed up, whatever had to happen. Yeah, it was quite amazing. It was like Jamie was saying, it was like, we get one project done, then we'd have to go into the other one, but I didn't feel like it was another project, but isn't this exciting, because yay, like we're going to divide 5th and 6th grade, so they'll each get their own classroom, so now we have the space. Just west of the farmhouse, there was a 2-story building. Now it's the 8th grade classroom, but we would have playgroup in there, no electricity. Every family had a mailbox in there. And the kids would go up and exploring. I mean, I can only imagine what was up there. I'm sure my boys were up in there too, but it was, it was just really a feeling of community. That's the best way to put it, is just a really strong sense that we were part of making the campus and what the school, what it could be, and what so many envisioned it to be.
I think according to the permit that we had, that building was condemned by the city and it wasn't supposed to be used.
I may or may not have fallen through the floor in that building once.
Mhm.
Which building was condemned? Was it the farmhouse or an old one that got torn down?
The one that got torn down, that was a 2-story building. So it was there, I think the first 2 years that the school was charter, and the first year, I think it was just like a little part of it was still used for the parent mailboxes. And then it had, a little patio space that had some shade for the kids at recess time. But the second year it was completely locked up. Yeah, it was definitely like all the electricity had been cut off to it. I think that's when, the city had said you can't use it anymore. And so we had stopped using it. There might have still been like storage or something. Well, there was tons of stuff in it. I think even from before the school bought the property. Yeah. And I remember when they were going to demo it and we were all going to come and watch, and it was like they had taken it down before we even got there. Like the crew showed up early or something, and it was like
They
down.
came in at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
and by 11 o'clock, everything was gone. The concrete was gone. Everything
Yeah.
was gone. The dry well that I didn't tell anybody was filled. When I saw that, it says filled out quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Is that where the 8th grade building is now?
No, there's no building there unless they built something recently. It's the open space between the house and the modular.
Mhm.
The first modular that was brought in, that one,
The one that's,
You
I think,
know.
the 8th grade classroom now. Yeah.
it's
Oh,
got yeah.
okay. It used to be a space. Yeah, that was actually not there because we started the 2nd year of charter, like
Yeah.
MS, and I think it was gone by then. Gerald, do you have any favorite building stories from those early days?
The nightmare ones.
I
That
just,
first building we had built off-site that we brought in, the one that Jamie mentioned with the big cranes to, put in place. The contractor wasn't kind to us. We lost
no.
about 60,000 on that one from the contractor when they
Yeah.
declared bankruptcy. Then I took over basically the project as a general contractor, volunteer, and got it finished. And we eventually got it done. But I'm the one that was calling for permits, and I did a lot of the electrical hookup from the main source underground to bring the wires in, on and on. But that was an interesting one. Then we built another one, a similar one.
Same floor plan,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. But
Yeah,
on one
the same
side.
floor plan, except I took charge of that one and we had it stick built on site. And the contractor was great. And I basically offered him a bonus. He was on time. So he was on time because he wanted his bonus and he did a good job. I was pleased with that one.
Except, wasn't that the one that the day of or the day after we got the certificate of occupancy, that big tree fell on it and came through the roof, right?
I'm not sure if it was at that time, but I remember the tree actually did not come, through the roof. The tree folded over and leaned on the roof.
There was
It
a
didn't
little roof
cost
damage.
very little, actually. There was very little, damage. And it was after a storm, was very good timing for the tree to come down because I called the Century Crane and they had canceled all their jobs because of the storm. So they had all their cranes available. So they showed up within an hour or two with a crane. They lifted the tree up and they put it on the ground. And then I think the kids played with that for years. I don't know how long it stayed there. But that was a good climbing, walking on the tree. Instead of vertical, it was horizontal.
There's probably still stumps, from it around campus and different
I wouldn't be
places, I
surprised.
bet.
Yeah.
And I know it happened right before it was even occupied and
It was before school started, yeah.
before, like, we were still ready for the first day of,
Mhm.
for the first
Right.
years that were in that building.
It does seem like almost every year there would be a really big monsoon storm, like right around the first day or the first week of school. It was just, wasn't it always like that? Maybe it's still like that now. You get everything ready and then,
Carpets cleaned,
woo,
carpets would be cleaned and beautiful. And
Yeah.
then the rain would come and they'd all play in the mud and it would be like, oh, the mess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you grow the space. I love to hear about growing the community. Because Jill talked about like how many people showed up and worked and for, I'm sure, a quite long period of time to get the straw bale.
I'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I would love to hear about that.
So, as I said, I was the assistant with Miss Gina. And so I got to know Gina and Tom quite well. And we spent, all of us, all of you, so much time on the straw bale. And it was so much fun for me. Some of my fondest memories were working with all of you individually. And you, Gerald, I have such a wonderful memory. You may not even remember this, but it's always sat with me. You and I together welded that rebar fence along the side of the straw bale. And it was just these moments that we had together, each one of us, if it was lazuring the classroom or, helping to stain the floors or, as Jill said, stuccoing or whatever it was just so meaningful to me because I was connecting with people as a new person here to Arizona as well, new person to this community. And obviously, when we're all working together with our hands to build something we all want and are learning from, it was just magical. It was just magical. And it will forever be with me those times because it just meant so much to me. It really felt like my second home then that I was helping to build with all of you. So yeah, thank you guys for that.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like I built some great, relationships and friendships. And when I would compare, what I had compared to like my family members whose kids maybe went to their neighborhood public school, and they didn't even know the other parents, so they'd be sending their 5, 6, 7-year-old for a sleepover at somebody's house that they had like waved at, and that was it. Like didn't even know them, and that we would have all these great times where we would get together with our kids, these big camping trips and times at the lake and just amazing memories for our whole family, not just for our kids to have. Yeah.
You've all been leaders in the community, and I'd love to hear about how you like Jessalyn as a teacher and Jamie in the office often being a first contact for people, like how you grew the community, made it strong so that it could grow and expand and be more inclusive.
Well, one thing I can speak to as a former teacher that I did learn from Miss Avi and Miss Gina is that, and what I carried forth as a lead teacher is those parent evenings. They were so magical and wonderful and fun, and we learned so much from that. And then I took that on when I was helping to educate families that were coming into the class, and again having something we all did together, and have an artistic and have a reading and food, and it was just wonderful. And I know the families all loved it. I loved it. And again, I could continue to get to know the community and all of the members of the community, as well as getting to know the families in my classroom. And I just, those parent evenings were an integral part of getting to know and deepening my commitment to Waldorf education. And as a parent, as a teacher, et cetera, I can't even tell you how much that was. And we had so much of it. And plus also there was so many speakers and people that would come in and educate for the teachers and the parents. And it was just beautiful. It was beautiful. I mean, I was learning almost like every other weekend. There seemed to be something, so it was wonderful. Sorry to go on about that, but it was.
No, that's good. And I really want to jump in with what you said there, Jessalyn, that you were learning, because that's one of the things that was my strongest experience, or it's what Gerald said when he said he saw the school and his thought was, I want to go here. I often found when it was my role to talk with families who were considering the school, one of the things that I often said was, I know that you're choosing a school for your child, and something to think about is that you're also choosing a community for yourself, and that there are opportunities here for you both to share out of your gifts, what you love, what you already know that you love and you're really good at. And there's opportunities for you to learn things that are completely new to you, where you're going to grow. And I think that I know that was my experience as a member of the community. And I loved seeing that in people who stayed, who came and who stayed through the ups and downs, because we all know that community doing something together is not always easy and always fun. There are those nightmare moments of the problem with a contractor, or just figuring out how to work on things together. But there was so much, I know I learned, I think, more than I even know from being part of the community.
Thank you. Gerald?
I was the student that never went to class. I would be on site. I would do stuff. I usually wouldn't ask for permission. I would just go do it. Plant a tree, build a hill, move some dirt, and I spent a lot of days there. I think one whole year I was there full time. Yeah, and 40 hours a week at least. And no, that was a lot of it. Seal the pond, build a little amphitheater hill that I don't know if it's still used, but on and on. I helped to build that straw bale structure for the garden for the 3rd grade that one year. They had a big dream that year, big project. And also I worked with Amy a fair amount in the background. were the one that, like Emmy and I, we masterminded buying that 5 acres, the Crabtree property. I think we did that whole thing before we presented it to the school. It was already bought in our minds. And we had to convince, I don't know, the board or whoever was it, was going to make a decision and to get it financed. But I think that was a big success to get that piece of land. And then, stuff like that.
That's one of the things that popped up in one of my memories recently was that parking lot that, speaking of another hard time, when we bought that property and converted the old Crabtree house into the new admin building, and moved the parking lot. Parents used to drive in the middle of campus, right through the middle of the playgrounds practically, to the parking lot in the back. And so buying that property and having that parking lot that didn't go through the middle of all the classroom spaces, and then knowing that we didn't want a giant asphalt parking lot, and that's what the city wanted us to do. And goodness, what was it, 18 months, I think, Amy, of just educating the city of Phoenix on the gravel pave and how that could make a difference with not having that giant heat sink of an asphalt parking lot and not having to do the extra water retention areas, and not having to do the digging that would require the potential disruption of area that's bordered some of the Indian grounds and everything. So like another time where we had to make a decision. Do we take the easy route and do what the city wants us to do, or do we fight and do we stand up for what we believe in and do what's right?
Yeah, they always wanted us to work on the street, to widen the street and all that. We already had to petition that and say, no, we're not doing that. So, which is still not done, I believe.
Nope, it's the same. And I have to say, not only did we get, water retention and no asphalt, but we also got a parking lot that didn't become a mud pit on those rare days when it rains. That was really
Well,
nice.
well, it probably needs to be maintained and improved.
But it gets a lot of use. And now the old parking lot faculty can come in the back because we have grown so much that just the one is hardly enough to hold everybody. Let's see. Are there any favorite memories that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share from all those years of developing this campus and the community?
When I got there, the school ended at the Straw Bale, building. That was the end of the school. So everything beyond that was wilderness, was plants. It was all nursery stuff back there. And we got a grant, I believe, one summer to hire some students to work. And I remember spending many days out there. I think I was splitting it with somebody else. I can't remember who did the other days. But I had my little trailer there. We'd load it full as high as we could, and we'd haul the stuff to the front. We filled the front of the lot from end to end, way up high for the city to pick up. And they came and picked it all up one day. I was amazed and didn't think we were going to pick it up, but that was a huge project that summer. I don't know if I aged that summer or what, but there was hot days working really hard. Yeah. So, and we finally got that whole back area cleared enough to do something.
Did it go all the way to the fence?
Yeah, all the way to the back. That was all boxes from trees, shrubberies that were grown, on and on. It was a lot of material to move.
Wasn't there a big mound of dirt too on the west side of the Straw Bale building that?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, and so that was like a visual, everything behind there was like not good, and the kids were always running up on that hill. I don't remember what it was like back. We would have driven out that way, but I don't remember seeing the trees and stuff.
Well, there wasn't really big trees or anything. There was just a lot of shrubbery and debris and stuff. And that mound that was there, that's what I had moved and made that amphitheater hill. That's where
Oh,
that dirt went.
the grassy knoll.
The grassy knoll.
Still there. They still run and play on that. They still do.
Is there trees still growing on it? I know we planted trees, but yeah.
Yeah. The grass has a trouble growing because the kiddos are running around so much, but
Mm-hmm.
it gets a lot of use.
When it was the middle school, it was sixth, seventh, and eighth grade at the beginning, and they'd have to cut the grass, right? Because teenagers or tweens or whatever they were, and then they
Mhm.
first, second, third. Now I think it's just first and second there, and then there's no grass. Like there'll never be grass there because the younger kids are running around everywhere, and the older ones would just go out and
Yeah.
languish on the hill.
Those young kids are like goats. They chew it down to the knob.
That just describes it. And other favorite memories of school, those early days?
A couple that come to mind for me are I was really excited that we chose this date to do this because this time, sort of the 13th, 14th of May, is what I think of as one of the many birthdays of the school. Because when we bought the property on 28th Street, that was when we closed on the purchase. And it was I don't remember just what the detail was, but it was one of those down to the wire, trying to get the right paper, do all of these different kinds of things. And so it was a birthday and it's been celebrated on and off. I think one year when the school did the refounding, it was this time of year. So it seemed really special to me that this was happening at one of the many birthdays, and that this is often a time when Bobby would do the Peach Festival. Like this is when the peaches get ripe. And so I always thought it was nice that the Peach Festival and the peaches went well with the school's birthday. So that's one. And the other one is in the early days over by the farmhouse. It was so lush there. And what was the property line between that property and what's now the high school was this massive, like I think pyracantha hedge.
Yeah.
And so that's basically where the children played. And they had this whole game where they would start on one end of it and they would go all the way through it without ever touching the ground through that. And that was just, that they loved that. Basically, my children, they really felt like all of the work that we were doing to develop the school over the years was, from their perspective, just making it a little worse and worse. Because there were more and more rules, there were more and more places that you couldn't go. We were taking down the hedges where they used to play. I mean, as adults, their perspectives have matured and are more complex and nuanced. But I did hear a lot of that, I can tell you.
That's one of my first memories of Forrest when I think of him was on top of that hedge. And it was, I mean, it's a very like prickly like hedge.
It's thorns, a lot of thorns.
Yeah, a lot of thorns. And the way he was navigating it was amazing. That made me think of also, remember all the chickens, the wild chickens? And the chickens attacked the kids if there was a rooster out there, but there were chickens out there with the kids playing and in that bush and all
And there
over.
was eggs, rotten eggs everywhere.
Oh,
I remember
Jeannie-
I
Oh, go ahead, Gerald.
because I carpooled, and one of the kids that I picked up was always in that hedge, and I had to go look for her. It was Emma.
Emma.
I had to go look for her and say, Emma, we're leaving now. I couldn't see her, but I knew she was up there. And it's just after waiting and waiting, eventually she came up. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Jamie, I was going to see if you remembered when we were working on something and there was that super deep hole in the sandbox filled with water, and Olivia was watching Mike and Matthew.
It was
with
summer.
life vests.
Yeah, it was summertime, and it was before we had a summer camp. And you and I worked, year round basically. And so our kids just like lived at the school all summer. And so yeah, Olivia was like the designated babysitter, and and they would play, and they said they were digging a hole to China. So they dug basically all the sand plus a lot of dirt out the middle of the giant sandbox, and they filled it with water. And then they found life jackets in the barn and they were swimming, which is funny because my kids knew how to swim. So I thought it was hilarious that she made them put on life jackets.
Mhm.
And I remember, I remember like the times that we were like, you go outside and where did Forrest go? And then you'd look up, you're like, Forrest, get off the roof, get down, get off the roof. And there'd be something up there he was retrieving. Somebody had thrown a ball or a Frisbee or something up there. Yeah, and my other like fond memory in terms of the kids was Peconomics. I think when Mike was in third grade, second or third grade maybe, and there were still all the pecan trees, and so they started doing this where they would make things, their little hand woven friendship bracelets or paintings or whatever they had, and they would sell them to each other, but the money that they used were pecans. And Mackenzie Weathers, that kid was going to be an entrepreneur. He somehow ended up with all the pecans, and then he wouldn't buy anybody's stuff, so he had all the money and everybody had things to sell, but he wouldn't buy anything.
Failed
Just-
economy.
Yep. Total failed economy. But he was like, he was like the money mogul because he had all the pecans. He was so excited.
Like a
You
country.
could go on a long time, Colleen.
I know, I love it. Miss Jesslyn, do you have any favorite memories from community building days?
Oh God, I have so many wonderful memories, but one overall sentiment I do have that I know that Amy had shared and Gerald had shared, and as far as coming into the classroom or being on the grounds or whatever it was, like the second day that I was assisting Miss Gina, it's like, I want to go back to kindergarten, and I sure did. I wanted to be at that school. It was just, someplace that I really wanted to be. And I was blessed that, it worked out for Emmanuel too. And a big part of that is that the school lent itself to this small town. So while there was a lot of time spent there working, teaching, building, etc., the kids were able to be free. And it was wonderful. They could explore the whole grounds. They were, who knows where they were. Truth be told, but it was just wonderful that they were doing their thing. And that was like a real natural childhood for them with that. Even though, yes, there was a lot of time spent, but it was a beautiful place for them to be while we were all doing our thing too. And I love that.
We worked together to make it work. That's really what I feel like it was. Even when there'd be a hard time, we would all come together and figure out how to get through it. There wasn't this feeling of don't say anything, don't tell anyone. It was like, okay, what's going on? What do we need to do? What can I do? Like every single person would step up and do their part and help. And we didn't always agree on what the end solution would be, but we would work through that. We would talk to each other and work through that as a group.
Well, I think it's because we were together so much. Our kids grew up together. The school needed to have people stuccoing or cleaning or,
painting.
I still say many hands make light work. Many hands make light work. We'd hear that constantly. I still say it probably 10 times a week. That's what we just okay, this needs to be done. And I am not saying it was perfect because of course nothing is perfect ever. But I think that I feel very lucky to have been part of the school at that time. I had moved around a lot as a child, had gone to 10 schools before I graduated from high school. So I never really had this sense of a school community or really even a community, because we'd be bouncing back from, you know, the Midwest to Arizona. And for me, because we were always going to leave, when Zachary was going to start school, you know, kindergarten, we were going to go back to Minnesota. Well, then with 2 kids, anyways, we were always going to get back to Minnesota. Well, we ended up not getting back. And a big part of it was because we found the school. I mean, and just that gift of community. I mean, I haven't seen Gerald for a while, and Jamie, I probably haven't texted you, but we, you know, saw each other last year, but we've just everybody lost a year. But like, I'm so thankful for the friendships of everybody I see here. And that you can still, that here you are 20 plus years later, you're still on my phone. I can call any of you and I know that you'd be there.
Yep.
And it was such a gift for our kids to grow up that way, to know
I
that.
want to share about being a board member. Yeah. I mean, my experience on many board meetings was we'd have an issue and we'd discuss, and especially one of them where I changed my view. I mean, everybody was sharing their view on it. As everybody was sharing, I would shift. And I would notice, wow, no? And it's like, I thought I had a strong view on this, but at the end I was shifting. And at the end we made a decision. I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but I remember the process happening and the discussion and all that and how we came to a decision. And that was a really big learning for me to experience that and to see how the dynamics of the board was working. But not always that smooth.
That importance of listening to everyone's viewpoints and sometimes setting aside maybe your preconceived notion of how you thought things, you know, you like you're saying, Gerald, you know, you came in thinking this is the decision, this is how I'm gonna, you know, vote on this, but really being able to listen to everyone's viewpoint and then to make a decision for the best of all. And I know, I mean, Amy, I remember one of the most common you know, sayings in the office, you know, we would say, are you wearing your parent hat or are you wearing, you know, your teacher hat or your board member hat or your whatever, because, you know, we all have very strong emotions and feelings about our kids. And sometimes it was hard to put aside what maybe would be best for your child to make a decision for something that would be best for a majority of the children as a whole, you know, or the community as a whole. And being able to, you know, to really take that parent hat off and do what's best for the whole community.
So Colleen, are you on the board now?
No, I definitely.
No,
No, I'm not on board.
but you're still baking.
I'm still baking. I am still doing
Yeah.
cupcakes for 8th grade and high school, like I've always done cupcakes.
Good.
8th
The
grade.
cupcake lady.
So good.
Yeah, still doing that, and still here. And so, like Jill said, like treasure all these memories and all the friends. I think about my friend group in the largest sense, and really how many of them are tied to school. And I just can't imagine what life
Yeah.
was like without DMS, and like how grateful my kids got to have that small town childhood because of DMS. They did get to run around and do things like the Peconomics, or my son loved to collect sticks. And then I'm like, I don't know how there were any sticks left on campus because so many of them ended up in my yard. How much they loved it, and like what a tremendous gift it was to the whole family, like to the children to grow up in that way. And what we forget is one of the busiest metropolitan areas in the country, but they had this little town childhood. Yeah. So I am too very grateful for all the
Yeah.
and all the hard work that you all who came before me did. You could come in charter year number 2 and really just like ride the wave to that great
It was
happened.
wonderful to go hang out on campus when there was nobody there in the evenings or on weekends, early morning during irrigation. Yeah.
I had thought
It had-
the same way. Did the ducks come out of the pond and walk
Mhm.
around? And it's so quiet and lovely. And yeah, I know what you're saying.
I was going to say to Jamie, or in the middle of the night when we got the fire alarm, or the alarm, for the longest time, we were on the list if the various alarms went off. And
Yes.
so someone would call us and you'd be woken up in the middle of the night, and then we have to get in the car and drive down and see what was going on. And usually it was nothing, but one time there actually had been a little like a fire started in the straw bale that that then the
Oilcloth.
sprinkler system caught.
That was
Yeah.
the cloth that had a cleaner or something on it that caught.
There was
actually
oil
real
that they
fire.
had used to a project in the classroom.
Yeah.
And they had put them all in a bucket and it ignited. There was no fire really. There was just enough heat to
Well-
turn the sprinklers on, and the sprinklers did all the damage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the time that a water line broke underneath that building that got craned in. And so it flooded and
Yeah.
it shorted out something in the fire alarm system. I remember being there with you, Gerald, that night at whatever time in the middle of the night it was. And then when we finally installed the burglar alarm, and that would go off all the time, but usually it was somebody didn't lock a door, or faulty sensor or whatever. And then the one time, Amy, that I think you and I both responded, and there actually was somebody who had broken in and was sleeping upstairs. And here we're telling the police, oh, the doorbell is open all the time, it's no big deal. And they were like, no, we'll go in first. And there was somebody in there, thank goodness. They actually went in first.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that story I had never heard.
Yeah.
Those are great stories. Are there any more thoughts? I don't want to keep you all night because I would listen to stories all night, but I'm sure everybody
Yeah.
to get on with their evenings.
I'm just so grateful that you're doing this. An idea that I had years ago, sort of imagining some celebration, whether it would be 20 years or 18 or 21 or something like that, would be to do a story circle where people tell, people who were there in the 90s tell stories, and then people who were there in other parts tell stories. Because I think what's so important in a community is that that it's always welcoming, that it's always allowing the possibility of what comes next, and a space for people to create and have these kinds of community building experiences. I think when it's all sort of done and people get into the mindset that this is how it is and it has to stay that way, then there's not the space for this kind of creativity and working together. So I always appreciated that for everything that I experienced and got to learn from, I knew that there were all these other things going on where people were building community. And to me, that's a really beautiful thing, that it's bigger than any one of us. So much.
Definitely.
Thank you. I totally agree. Folks, anything else?
I want to thank you, Colleen, for putting this together. I think this is great.
My
And for
pleasure.
everybody to show up on this call. And I'm going to have to check out at this time. I double booked myself, so I have to go to the other appointment now.
Well, that's good. We should wrap up. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. It was great seeing all your faces.
Great to see everyone.
Yeah, everybody looks the same age and the same beauty and nice as they were back when I was there.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yes.
I'm the only one that's aged.
Oh. We're all using the beauty filter on our Zoom call.
Mhm.
right. Good night, everyone.
Good
Night.
night.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.